Hey, welcome back to another episode of A Warrior Spirit, the show where the inner warrior shines in their light. This is year three of the podcast, and I'm excited. We are presented by Praxis 33, where thought and action is aligned to help create your best life. And today I'm so thrilled. I have year three starting off with an amazing guest, Chad Gaines. Chad is an author, a speaker, a coach, and his story, his life story, is being turned into a movie called Pocket of Hope. And his book, Who I Am, details his childhood. And we're just thrilled to have Chad here sharing his story. And Chad, I want to welcome you to the show and thank you for joining me.
Yeah, great to be here. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year. Yeah, 2025 is going to be an amazing year for all of us. I'm thrilled about it. So, in your book, Who I Am, you detail your childhood and your upbringing. Um, was in your book you state that your mother killed your stepfather. Was that while you were a child or as you were more of an adult? Can you just kind of lead us to how that all transpired?
Sure, we lived in a little farm town in Indiana, northern Indiana, when I was 28 years old when my mother killed my stepfather.
Okay. So
And
you mentioned that your childhood was not so great. Was your mom married to your stepfather that entire time?
no, she was married to my dad, and my dad left around. I was about 5 years old when my dad left. He was a truck driver, and he just took a load like every other day and just never came back that day. And we found out later that he had started a new family in New York City and just moved on.
So he literally went out for a pack of cigarettes and never came home, so to speak. Got in his truck
That
and left.
that is correct. Yes,
Wow. And how was your childhood after that? Oh, that one's muted. Sorry
with
about that.
just backhands and yelling and screaming to just horrific, vicious attacks.
How long did that go on?
That went on probably until about the age of 14 when I had a huge growth spurt and I was just basically too big to beat on anymore and got kicked out of the house to fend for myself, so to speak.
So at age 14, you were on your own, and did you have friends or other family, or how did you survive at 14?
I didn't. I was getting ready to turn 15 when I got kicked out. I had to drop out of school. I was in junior high school. I had to drop out of school and really just fend for myself. I went through a couple homeless shelters for minors back then. It was the Runaway. I can't remember what it was, but it really protected me. But for the longest time, I slept outside. We had a softball field right behind our house, and then I was able to. Get a work permit and go to work at a grocery store, Publix, as most people know in Florida, very widely known. So I that was where I started, making $75 a week. Slept in wherever I could in people's living rooms, couches. Slept in a camper with a friend that had a camper parked in their driveway. Homeless shelters, just wherever I could go to survive and continue to work because I knew I needed money to survive, obviously.
So as a child, I mean, I wasn't kicked out of my house, but I had an abusive childhood myself, and I've shared that story with my audience before, so I can relate to a lot of what you said. I was homeless at the age of my early 20s.
Mhm.
Things happened. I was living out of my car, so I can empathize with that situation, but also as a child, because you weren't an adult. So as a child, how did that affect your school, your relationships with other people, your mentality? Like, how did you get through all that?
Well, first of all, I was diagnosed with PTSD, as you can probably imagine, and that affected my whole adulthood, childhood, midlife, everything. From relationships to problem solving to money management was just out of control. I turned to drugs and alcohol at 16 years old, was doing hardcore drugs then. And there was just something in me, kind of like your show. This is a perfect fit. It was just like a warrior spirit that I had. And if you look up my name, Chad, the meaning of Chad means warrior and protector.
I find that to be pretty awesome. The fact that you are in this situation and you're learning and you're growing from it and you're living into your namesake. I've always told my audience, you know, when we're going through our stuff, when we're going through our junk, we don't sit there and go, "Hey, God, thank you for all the crap we're going through." We go, "Hey,
Right.
how am I going to get through this?" But then as
Right.
we mature and age, we get to a point where we're like, "Oh, well, that helped me be who I am today." And people in your situation could have gone several ways down a road of self destruction and self medication. Did you do any of the self medicating, or did you stay away from that aspect?
I went through it all. I went through the self medicating where I began drinking heavily at 16 years old. Got introduced to heroin and cocaine at the first time at 16 years old. So by the time I was 16, 17 years old, my life was completely out of control. I had $1,000 a day drug habit at 17 years old. Had already been shot in the face 3 times over a bad drug deal, lost all my teeth on the bottom on both sides, and was really fortunate to be alive. But for me, I think the biggest thing that survival taught me was I didn't ask God why this is happening to me, because I felt it was forming me into the person, the young man that I was supposed to be. And I didn't meet that young man until I was about 32 years old, unfortunately. But I was prepared for anything by the time I reached that age, because of all the trauma and PTSD and everything else that I experienced in my life. I was already prepared for anything in my life by then.
So, how does a minor get $1,000 drug addiction and afford that? Like, what did you do that allowed you to even afford that?
Well, I was involved in a lot of thefts and criminal activity, and also selling drugs to rival gangs, and using the profit or using the extra, so to speak, for my own drug habit. And it just grew and grew and grew until it was, met head on, and that's how I ended up getting shot.
So, living a life on the streets is not ideal for anybody. Living the life you were living often leads to death early. So, what was your turning point? What made you say, you know what? This is not what I'm built for. I'm supposed to be doing something different. What was your lifeline and how did you make that transition?
Well, for me, I was about 26 years old when I thought that I was going to clean up my life. Everybody that's addicted to something always thinks there's going to be a turning point, and there is later on down the road. But we always get this idea in our head that something mysteriously is going to happen and it's all going to go away, and we're just going to be this incredible, awesome human being. And for me, there was two turning points in my entire life that changed everything, that made me the man who I was and the man who I was going to be. And the first point is I got in a lot of trouble. I ended up going to jail, ended up getting sent off to prison for criminal gang activity, organized crime, because I was involved in so many thefts and so many different criminal activities. Um, but my turning point came while I was in prison, because that's when I decided to start writing my journey and talking about everything that happened to me, but also those little key victories that happened for me. And that was the beginning of the turning point of everything. That was the first turning point of everything. And when I got out, I just kept my word. I'll go wherever you want me to go, God, if you just give me another chance. And he put me on stages that I never dreamed that I would be, to share my story. And that's where it kind of exploded throughout the nation.
There's a moment in time where we all have to have our own version of come to Jesus moment, and it's hard enough to do it on this side of the bars. You seem to have found it somewhere on that side of the bars. Was there some particular instance or person that really got you there, or was it all internal fortitude that said, you know what, I need something different?
Well, there was a pastor that was coming to see me, John Bourne, and that man totally changed my life. He gave me the platform to share my story to. I had never had anybody to share my story and what I had been through and what I was going through currently. And he just did that. And I just took that step to say, maybe one day I can speak to individuals that doesn't really have a voice or a platform to share their story, because that's a big thing in America. Men don't express themselves, out of guilt, out of shame, and John just gave me that opportunity to do it. And less than a year after I was out of prison, I was doing prison ministry with John Bourne. And unfortunately, at that time, I had some health issues. I was getting really bad headaches, and before I even got a chance to go to the doctor, I ended up having a light stroke and ended up in a nursing home. And of course, John was right there, him and his wife. And I couldn't even talk at that time. I had to learn how to talk again. So everybody kind of left me because they said, well, this motivational speaker doesn't have a voice, so he's not profitable for us. So everybody left me. I had friends and family just leave me in a nursing home basically to die. And everybody was more worried about me dying than I was, because I've been like, well, all the things that I have been through, this is nothing. I
Yeah.
can still write. I was writing on sticky notes to John, and then I was in the nursing home at that time, probably about 10 months. And John and his wife come in, and he had a DVD in his hand, and he said, I want you to watch this movie because it reminds me so much of your determination, that one day you're going to share your story and millions of people are going to be inspired. Put the DVD in, and it was The Pursuit of Happiness
Oh,
with Will Smith, based
yeah.
on Chris Gardner's life here in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And I remember writing on a sticky note, I want to go to San Francisco. Never been here a day in my life. Didn't have anybody left in my life. Didn't know anybody here. Didn't have a job. I had $7.18 to my name. And I said, I want to go to San Francisco. He says, I'll make you a deal. He says, if you learn how to walk again within a year, I'll get you a one-way bus ticket to San Francisco. But you have to figure it out.
And how old were you at this point when you went into the nursing home and all that?
That happened in 2010. So, you know, much younger than I am now.
Yeah.
So, I was in my late 30s when that happened,
Yeah.
and now I'm 52. And it was amazing how God put all that together. And he said, I've prepared you for this. And the reason why I prepared this for you is because I'm going to take you to San Francisco, where you don't have money, you don't have a job, you have a little clothing left because they took everything from me. I had a black backpack. I had $7.18. I had a toothbrush and toothpaste from the nursing home, and I was going to go because I knew I was strong mentally, physically. Spiritually, nothing could penetrate what I had already been through. So this was nothing. So I came to San Francisco, uh, stepped off the Greyhound bus here in San Francisco, and I said, wow, what did I get myself into? It's much colder than I thought because it's Northern California. I thought it would be like Los Angeles and it would be hot. So I wore a pair of shorts and like a black hoodie similar to this one. And that was all I had. That was all I had. I didn't have no job. I had $7.18. Took me 3 days from that little farm town in Indiana to San Francisco to get here. So I was starving to death. Didn't realize how expensive California prices were. So $7.18 just barely bought me a bottle of water and maybe a fruit snack or something, and that was it. So what I did is, fortunately, I found a fast food restaurant and sat down and had the best cheeseburger in my entire life.
When we're starving, and I'm speaking from someone who lived out of my car as well, when we're starving, those simple to even just a Snickers bar goes down like it's a filet mignon. Like, so I can imagine after all that time what a cheeseburger felt like to you. It had to be just amazing. I want to backtrack just a minute because you said this was 2010ish, but in 2004 you were honored as one of the 10 most outstanding young Americans, which going from prison to that in and of itself is like wow. And then in 2008, 4 years later, you were honored with the Daily Points of Light by the president. So how does someone go from being heroin addicted, shot in the face, doing gang banging basically, prison, uh, to those awards prior to your stroke and then venturing off to California? So how do those other two things come about for you?
Well, I mean, it definitely was not Chad Gaines. God put a lot of people in my path to help me get to those things, but this was just a testimony of of God taking a broken man and changing him into this somewhat, as the nation would call, superhero. And it was just by the grace of God. There was nothing that I did. I just had an open heart and open mind, and made that promise in 1999 when I was in prison. And I said, God, if you give me one more chance, I'll go wherever you want me to go. And here it is, 2025 now, and I've spoken in every single state in our whole country, traveled to places that I never dreamed that I would travel to, and got to meet the president, handed me an award. I got to meet my childhood idol, Christopher Reeves, before he passed, as Superman. And came to my award speech in 2004 in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and told me I was Superman. Those things like that's just a testimony of God doing that. That has nothing really to do with me, other than I'm just that person that says, okay, this is what you want me to do. This is where you want me to go. I'm going to go. So that's the only way I can describe it, because only 2% of people go from heroin addiction to having a movie based on their life, is one in a 40 million person chance of that. So I mean,
So what
that's nothing that I.
exactly? Yeah, and God is great in those instances. It's amazing when we actually obey, because you are, from what we've discussed so far, a living example of. A lot of people say, Jesus take the wheel, but we tend to keep our left hand on it and still want to make the turns. You appear to have embodied actually giving your life over to whatever comes and doing whatever you are led to do. What did it take to actually get the honor of being TOYA, 10 Most Outstanding Young Adult Americans, and the Daily Points of Light? I mean, what activities precipitated receiving those accolades?
I got those for, well, the 10 Outstanding Young Americans is back up a little bit. The 10 Outstanding Americans I was given for overcoming insurmountable odds. So it was just based on my story, my courage to speak out, because a lot of men don't speak out, and that's okay too. That's how they handle it. I have family members that refused to speak out because it was just so intense and so crazy, as they say, that they feared no one would even believe them. So they kept it in, and it affects their lives every day. And for me, I was just the opposite. I just had to speak out because that was my platform to help other people. And that was the only option that really I had, because even speaking out, I mean, this affects me every day. It will affect me until the day I die. I mean, just last night I was woken up in the middle of the night from a horrific nightmare. So I got the nightmares, I got the flashbacks during the day, but this is what I know and believe in my heart, that I know this is my calling. This is what I'm supposed to do. All the other stuff is just a bonus that I get to do, and the people I get to meet, and the podcast I get to come on, and directors and actresses and actors that play me in a movie. That's just extra stuff. But to be able to have a beautiful family, and my wife that, as you personally know, helps me along the way.
Yeah. um,
So
I, I,
that's why I was just nominated out of 10,000 recipients that were nominated for the award, and they only picked 10 out of that 100,000. So
that's pretty
that was
amazing.
pretty good odds. Starts out at 100,000, gets all the way down to 10,000, and just to make it to the 10,000 is like amazing. And
Yeah.
then it gets all the way down to that 10th person, and then you're flown to the event to speak in front of 4,000 people.
Wow.
Uh, win this beautiful award with some of the most prestigious men and women in the whole country, from all over, from Christopher Reeve, like I said, to some of my superheroes, to presidents and vice presidents, and sports figures. It's just a really amazing event to win the 10 Outstanding Young Americans Award.
That's pretty awesome. You said something that I definitely want to elaborate on a moment. Men don't speak out, and I hope that guys like you and I can change that along the way, because I've always said to those that I speak to about this subject, um, the only um, the only emotion men are allowed to present to the world is anger. We're allowed to be angry. People don't like the violence that comes with the anger, but they understand our anger, and they get it. But as soon as a man is trying to be vulnerable or honest with his true emotions and true feelings, um, suddenly the world doesn't understand that, and they don't know how to categorize that.
Mm,
And because they get labeled a certain way when that happens, more men only stay in touch with their anger. I'm going to, be 60 in a few weeks, and for 58 years, anger was the only emotion that I was comfortable with. Chaos was the only emotion I was comfortable with. And until I did the true inner work and the true healing, even though I've been a man of faith and been a man of God. I know God has kept me alive, all those reasons. Anger was the only thing. And I've been with my wife for 10 years now, and her grace and her love, because it's easy for men to say, oh, that's just who I am. Well, that's a cop out and a bullshit answer, if you pardon me for a minute, because
totally.
that's just
Totally.
not wanting to do the inner work to change. And the fact that you overcame everything you overcome to make those changes and to go where you are, um, man, that's a real testament not only to God, because God works in all of our lives if we let Him, but to your intestinal will to make the change necessary. So along that journey, where did your wife come in? Because obviously it wasn't while you were doing heroin and being in drugs. So where did that portion of your joy and happiness come into?
My wife came in my life about 4 years ago, and it was through a networking company. And I almost talked myself out of it, because that's what men with PTSD do. We isolate ourselves. I was living alone for probably about 4 years at the time, and she contacted me and wanted to meet, and I said okay. And then at the last minute, I text her back and I said, I don't think I'm going to be able to make it. I got some things going on, which I had nothing going on. I was sitting in my room, just lonely and just like happy with my life, and just willing to just give up, live by myself, and be content with that, because I had already been by myself, so I wasn't afraid of that. And she says, "Well, I'm sorry, I'm already coming into the city to see you, and I know not a man that's going to ditch me, so I'll see you there at 8 o'clock."
I am smiling and laughing because she sounds exactly like my wife.
And I've been with her every day since.
we 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 are blessed by those tenacious enough to have those meetings, because they are truly uh, joyous, life altering things, and we through that grace and that love, we get to learn that, hey, we're worthy of that kind of companionship and relationship as well. So kudos to your wife, and I'm glad that it's the first four of many, and hope it's lifelong joy in that. Um, your movie is Pocket of Hope, the Chad Gaines story. Um, was your presence on stage and some of these other awards that you won what caught the eye of Hollywood, or how did that come about?
Well, it's a really funny story because the first deal that I was offered to walk away was a once in a lifetime deal. It was over seven figures, and I actually turned it down to walk away. I was working at a restaurant at the time, and the same restaurant when I first came to San Francisco, because I needed money. So I thought, okay, I'm really good with people. I need to be a waiter. I can get cash. I can eat whenever I want, and all these things, get established, get a place, all those things. And I had just been in the right time, in the right place where God wanted me to be. And I was in a coffee shop, and I had overheard these gentlemen talking about how they needed a really good, passionate story to turn into their director. And I said, "Okay, I think this is what you want me to do, because this is a big sign." So I approached these gentlemen, and even though how I was looking, I was good to work. I was carrying an apron in my hand, and I told them, "I'm sorry, I overheard your conversation. I think I got something you're gonna."
We had a little technical glitch there, but should be
Yeah.
back. Okay.
So I approached these guys, and I told them that I would send them something, and I sent 2 chapters of my book. Okay.
Alrighty. So you're overhearing this story, and you send them a couple chapters from your book, and then what?
And and I went ahead and went to work. I come home, and that's when I sent the chapters to them. And within an hour, I was on the phone with one of those gentlemen from the coffee shop, and he says, "We work with a media company in Oakland, which is just right across the bay, basically from where I'm at." And I got on a phone call with him. There's a three-way phone call, and he was connected with a large Hollywood production company. And before I knew it, in the next 6 months after that phone call, I was flown to Hollywood and offered a deal for seven figures to just basically say, okay, we like what we're reading here in the book, but we're going to rewrite a movie script for you and all those things. And uh, the biggest thing that led me to turn it down was they wanted to change everything. They wanted to change everything to make it look more Hollywood, more exciting, and I felt that that's not what God wanted me to do. To change everything, He wanted me to tell a detailed account of what happened, because that's what happened. That's where I went through. That's what happened to me. But He also wanted to share what happened for me. in a sense. So I self-published the book. It became a bestseller. And then I had a Hollywood writer approach me and say, I want to write the movie script based on your life. And we really connected. We have a daughter the same age that's 9 years old, soon to be 10 here in 2025. And we just really connected. He wrote the movie script. I pitched the movie script to a couple places that was turned down, rightfully so. And we rearranged some, of the scenes in the book from the book into the movie. We shot a 7 minute torch, is what they call it. We uploaded it to Angel Studios, and it just went wild. It passed. We got a movie deal. We got a distribution deal with Angel Studios, which is a faith-based Christian family movie, TV series, children's TV shows as well. And I just knew that's where God wanted me to be, where I was able to keep all the rights to the movie. I own all the rights to the movie, all the rights to the production, all the rights to the book. And that's exactly what God wanted me to do. He was testing my patience. They wrote me out a $4 million check, the other production company, and said, here's the check. Just walk away. We want the book rights. We're going to write a movie script, and we own everything. Just walk away. Here's $4 million. Okay. And I turned that down. Because I knew I had that discernment that God was testing my patience. How bad do you want this? Are you willing to give up this for something bigger that I have planned for you? But can you wait another 5 years? Can you work at a restaurant for 5 more years and be patient? Because I have something way bigger that nobody in this world is going to believe. And that's what happened.
I think that, I talk to my wife about this all the time because, there's story after story in the Bible of people who, went through their own version of hell on earth to get to where they went. And, I talk about, Moses a lot because when you look at that journey on paper, walking it should not have taken more than 2 years. So wandering around in the desert for 40 years to get to the
Yeah.
promised land and still be faithful of it. Um, I talk about that all the time. So for you to have the discernment, because coming from where you came from, $4 million up front would have blown a lot of people away. So the fact that you were connected in your heart and you're connected in your heart and you were connected in your head to know God has something more for me, and whatever that is going to be bigger than this $4 million. And so when you see this, two books and a movie poster, and you own all of that, but God owns all of it even more. Um, how do you actually feel about that?
Well, there's a couple different ways I feel. Unfortunately, I don't have the hype and the sense of excitement like most people because the PTSD has numbed me to a sense where I look at this as just a job, daily job. I'm on the phone constantly with the director, and I got actresses that will play my mom that will contact me, and we'll do a Zoom, and the guy that plays me in the movie. Um, so I just look at it as a job now and a profession, so to speak. As I walked on the set and we're filming, and everybody's asking me, "Is this affecting you? Are you okay?" And I have no, I have no feelings of hurt or pain or flashbacks when I'm on the set. The hardest thing I ever done was sit down in front of my computer and write a book because I'm alone. I'm alone with my emotions. It's quiet. I'm listening to music as I'm typing, but I can go in graphic detail about the story when I'm writing. When I'm on the set, it didn't affect me at all. The money, the fame, the hype, everything like that, that's just extra bonus that doesn't really excite me because I realized this movie is about me, but it's not for me. It's for other individuals. It's about the 10 million Americans that suffer from PTSD every year. And that's what I did this for. I did it for other people, not for myself.
I love your introspective, even as you're continuing to battle your inner demons. You have that duality that seems to be common to a lot of people, but you have a better handle on it. And I really admire the tenaciousness and the union that you have with God. That is so refreshing to see in today's world, that somebody is, in spite of all that they've been through and overcome, that they're still following their path to which they feel led to. I think we really skipped over a detail, and people might, I'm sure they'll go buy the book to find out, and watch the movie to find out. But um, you know, your mother killed your stepfather. Can
Mhm.
you just backtrack us a moment to that? Because I don't want to skip over that entirely. We just kind of skated through it like it's a normal thing, and and it's certainly not. So,
Yeah. It was in 2001 when this took place, and it was the surge of hydroxycut pain medicine that came on the scene that was just explosive for pain medication. And my stepfather became addicted to it. Later on, my mother would become addicted to it, and that's what ended his life. He had so much anger from the pain, and the medicine itself made a lot of people angry. Where there was, millions of people died from overdose, and that's what the drug company was actually doing on purpose. They knew what they were doing, but they were doing it for a sell and they didn't care. People were just going out of their minds addicted to the hydroxycut. And my mother had, you know, they had many pill bottles at the house, and it became so addictive to them that they were crushing it up, cooking it, putting it in syringes, and shooting it up because my stepfather had diabetes on top of that. He was a really big guy. He was about 7 foot tall and weighed 400 and some pounds at the time of his death. And he became violent that night and he went to sleep, and my mom decided to end his life, um, give him an overdose, and it exploded his heart at 38 years old.
wow. Um, did your mother do prison time for that?
Unfortunately, no, because it was small town politics, and she went to school with a lot of people involved in the police force. They never really investigated it. They said, well, this guy is not such a good guy anyway, so, and me being in my spot when she directly called me and told me, I think I just killed your stepfather. And I went to her house and I see all these police officers there, state police, county police, city police. There's just ungodly amounts of police officers in this little mobile home trailer where my stepfather was back in the back bedroom. And they brought his body out. And I realized at the time he was really dead. And I sat there on my mother's couch in disbelief, thinking, okay, any minute these guys are going to slap the handcuffs on her, and my life's going to change forever once again because, now what's going to happen? Now my mother's convicted of a murder, and what's going to happen, to my adulthood, and how is that going to affect me? And, we're living in this small farm town. How am I going to explain that? It's all these things run through your head when that something like that happens at the time. And I watch every single officer walk by us and walk out the door, and I'm thinking, what's happening here? What is going on, or what's not going on, what's not happening here. And all the police officers left. They took the body, and the coroner left. And I'm sitting across from my mother as she's just staring with this evil, blank look. And I asked her, I said, "What did you do?" And she went into details and told me everything. And my first thought was like, okay, the abused kid is going to go to the police and say what his mother did. Nobody's going to believe that at all. It's a small town of 2,100 people. Uh, so what I did, I took her to the church, to the pastor, and sat down in the office. And I said, I don't know how to explain this. I'm going to let her explain it. And she opened up and told everything to the pastor. And still, I waited and waited, and months went by, and she was so scared. Any minute they're going to pull up and I'm going to go to prison for life. And then it became this thing of like, I got away with it. Now it's safe to tell other people. So she began to tell other people and brag about it, almost, that she got away with it. And unfortunately, that wasn't the first. That was the first, but not the last time that she would get away with murder.
Um, you said, unfortunately, she didn't go to prison, and your last sentence makes me understand why you said unfortunately. Um, she went on a killing spree. Like, if you kill more than one person, it's kind of not like what precipitated the rest of that.
The rest of it became, there's no more income coming from my stepdad because he's dead. My mother is at that point suffering from multiple sclerosis, so she's having trouble walking. Her feet are always hurting. She's in constant pain, so she's trying to get more pain medicine, and the doctor cuts her off because he says, "Okay, you're going to one store to get prescription, and you're going to the next store to get prescription, and you're going to this pharmacy and getting prescription, and we're catching up with you." And then she was able to slide into the doctor's office and steal a prescription pad where she could write her own prescriptions until she was caught and never sent to jail for that as well. And I think the biggest thing that came out of it was when the income dropped off, she had to come up with something. So she moved in with my grandmother that was just as vicious as her. Um, and everybody knew that. It's no secret. It's probably still 25 years later, it's probably still no secret there who they were and what they did to people. And it just became a um, insurance fraud at that point, where they would take elderly people into their homes that may had just lost a spouse, or maybe just retired and was slowly losing their functions, or their equipped to think well, and maybe Alzheimer's or dementia. And they just took them into their 3-bedroom house, and basically got credit cards in their name, got life insurance policies in their name, sold all their assets, their homes, took all the money. And basically, when they were completely broken, there was no use for them. They just happened to die in the bedroom. And they just, became a thing where um, my cousin and I would go over to visit my grandmother, and you would see the coroner truck parked out front again. And like, wow, this is really odd that these people keep dying in the home. And it was just one time that the grandmother confessed that, you know, they were putting antifreeze in their tea, in their hot tea, and they were only feeding them toast. So they were just very thin and wasting away because they were no longer needed, you know? So, I mean, when you see, I mean, eh, I'll ask the audience here, what's the odds of one person dying in your home? That's a pretty big, odd
Right.
that rarely happens because they're usually at the hospital, or some medical facility. But what about 5 people in the same house dying?
Right.
You
Yeah.
know,
And
after my stepfather was killed.
yeah.
So,
And I can understand why you still have the PTSD for sure. It
yeah,
also is why you're able to be an authority as a resilience coach. Um, you've you've lived through a lot, and
yeah,
you've lived through more than even those who've lived through a lot have lived through. Like it's a compound effect. So again, I go back to the kudos for you being as close to God as you are, and the relationship that you have, because everything you've described right now is an easy excuse for people to not turn out the way you've turned out. And if someone was going through a third of what you're going through, half of what you're going through, what would be your message of resilience to them?
well, I can only state what I did back then, and it was just start out celebrating the small victories over trauma and PTSD or drug addiction or whatever your thing that you're going through. Celebrate the very, very, very small victories. That's where you got to start. And open your heart to saying, I'll go wherever you want me to go, even if you don't believe. Just ask for the right people to come in your life at the right time, because God uses incredibly broken people to become, extraordinary people.
What I will add to that, you know, what you're saying is possible, but nobody is saying that that part is easy. That part is the harder part. It's harder than actually even going through the chaos, overcoming it and accepting it to move forward. Takes even more work than just getting comfortable in the chaos. And I think that what you're saying is of high value, but nobody is saying that that part is easy.
There's nothing easy about it. There's nothing easy about even being born. There's what is it, 400 and trillion one chances of even being born on Earth. So there's nothing easy about that. And there's nothing easy about trauma and drug addiction and alcoholism. And I went through all those things. And, like I said before, there were some great people that were put in my life at the right time, and that's what mattered, because it's very important that once you get past it, or once if you get in trouble and you end up in jail or prison and you get out, you have to have a great support system. And for years I didn't have that great support system, and the only way that I knew that I was even going to have a chance of being clean and getting away from that anger that we spoke about earlier was to leave my hometown. you know what do they say, 86% only become successful if they leave their hometown where they grew up, because there's bigger opportunities out there. And there was this huge warm sense of when I got with my wife, and the support system that she gave me is just, I can't compare that to anything else. She's done her studying on PTSD. She knows if I'm having a blank look and I'm looking out the window, I'm probably having a flashback. She'll snap me out of it. If I'm in a dream in the middle of the night, where I was last night, and I'm kicking and maybe fighting for my life from my mother, she'll wake me up because she knows what I'm going through. So it's very, very, it's extremely important. It's extremely vital to have a great support system, and find that wherever you can, whether it's church or school or men's groups, or wherever it may be that works for you, to have a great support system that wants to understand what you're going through, and that will not give you advice. You can't take advice from the same people from your what I'm saying. I can't get out of prison and go back and hang out with my buddies in the hood and expect me not to go back to doing drugs because that's what they're doing. And
Right.
I've known them since elementary. So they're not going to do anything else but that. I need to understand they're my friends from afar, but they're drug dealers.
Hmm.
Okay. And they're always going to be drug dealers. I have to understand that. That's what I know them for.
Yeah, it's important to change your circle if you want change to actually occur. I profoundly appreciate you kicking off year three of a warrior spirit and coming on. I asked this question. I've asked it to 105 other guests. I'm going to ask it to you as well. Um, what does a warrior spirit or having a warrior spirit mean to Chad Gaines?
I think it comes down to uh, in your life, you know. The warrior spirit for me is I can overcome anything as long as I have God and an open heart. Okay, I've had an open heart since I was 7 years old because I knew when I was getting beat on that I can overcome that. And when I was doing drugs, I know I could overcome that. When I came here to San Francisco without $7.18 to my name and no direction, no job, no place to stay, I knew, okay, God had prepared me. I'm going to go sleep on the street and work for 3 years of my life, take all that money and invest in me and this dream that I have. So I think the warrior spirit for me is you just don't stop. You just don't stop. You just keep going. The warrior spirit is exactly what you say it is, you know, what it means to you.
Well, I love that. And if my audience, if you would like to connect with Chad, you can go to gainschad.com and connect with Chad. You can also find his books, and we look forward to the upcoming movie of your life. I will definitely be in line to buy a ticket for that. And
Appreciate
Chad, it's just been a blessing for you to share this, and I look forward to what not only 2025 but the rest of the future brings, for you.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, go get the book. It's on my website. I sign them all. It's been a pleasure to be here. Yeah, I'm featured there with Les Brown, one of my favorite motivational speakers in the Change Book series as well.
Yeah,
And
Les
just
is Les is
everybody
amazing.
kicking this off in 2025.
Well, I appreciate you, and I thank all of you for joining us on this edition of A Warrior Spirit. Be sure to hit that like or subscribe button so you catch all the episodes. And may 2025 be a blessing to all of you.